Let's kick things off here. Chiefs at the Ravens, our first game on Sunday. It is sitting anywhere an expensive 3.5 to 4 right now in favor of the Ravens at home over the Chiefs. 44 to 44.5 is our total. If you look, relatively easy time for the Ravens this past week. It was a bit of a slog at first, but in the second half made some adjustments and it was pretty much easy sailing from there. That being said, only one offensive score for the Texans in that game, and it was just a field goal. So Ravens defense stepping up, getting it done. The Chiefs do eventually kind of outlast the Bills, and that's kind of how I viewed it. Curious as to how y'all saw that game, but we didn't see much for Rashee Rice, who had been the hero for this team over the last few weeks. It was back to the Kelsey train, a lot of Pacheco and things like that. Adam, I'll start with you here in this one. The 3.5s have now started to turn to 4s. It is toggling a little bit now, so people are buying in on the Chiefs at 4. So it seems as if we met the point of resistance. Seems like we're probably going to be looking at expensive 3.5s to 4s all the way up to kickoff. And from a total standpoint, we've seen this thing continually drop. I imagine 44 is kind of our bottom here when it comes to that, but some under money's been coming in throughout the week as well.
All right. As we look at what's on the board right now, fair for me to say that there's really only one side or total between these two games that I have any confidence in. I would have felt a lot better, and I'm sure you guys do if you got it, with Ravens 3 earlier in the week, where it is now 3.5, 4. I don't have any confidence in recommending it. That being said, I think we need to look at the total here. And I know the market has pushed this down to 44, and for me, I feel like that is a good buy point on the over between these two teams. Here's why. It's mostly about the Chiefs, because when I look at the Ravens offensively, I see a Ravens team that can do very well what Buffalo was doing very well and then sort of inexplicably got away from in the second half, because Buffalo in the first half was running the ball all over the Chiefs. And we've known for quite a long time that that is the way that you're going to be able to go after them. Going after them on the outside, throwing the ball is going to be difficult. Good thing for the Ravens, they don't do a lot of that in the first place. So I look at the Kansas City Chiefs on the defensive side and say you can get after them with the run. Now, on the other side of the ball, I think that's really where things get interesting. Last week, the Chiefs had the ball for 22 minutes, and they should have had 34 points. They still ended up with 27. That's a Chiefs offense we haven't seen for a while, right? The quick strike Chiefs offense that doesn't have to have the ball is an offense that has not been there for quite a long time for Kansas City. Now, the Pacheco injury is certainly something to monitor in terms of how they're going to be able to run this offense, because for as good as the Ravens defense is, the one way that they can be had a little bit second half of the season has been to run the ball. They are a bottom 3 team by both EPA per play and success rate against on the defensive side from week 9 on, against just solely against the rush. So the one look for me is over that 44. I believe the Ravens are going to be able to get their points in this game. Mark Andrews coming back is enormous for them to be able to keep working the middle of the field against this Chiefs defense. On the other side, I have confidence here that the Chiefs offense doesn't have to have the ball for all that long to be able to generate something. And I'm not saying generate 24, 30, 31, nothing like that. But I do think the Ravens are probably good for their part of 27 plus in this game, and that doesn't ask a whole lot out of the Chiefs. So I'm going to avoid the side. I like over on the total.
Mark Andrews, as you mentioned, is activated, has been activated. He will play. Offensive guard Joe Thuney for the Chiefs, unlikely to play for them in this one. Steven, I go into the, hey, look, teams can only play who is on their schedule. I just want to give a word of caution if people go in and just look at the surface statistics for the Ravens this season, specifically the Ravens defense, instead of looking, a little bit deeper. I know there's been a lot of talk about, they only gave up this many yards and, they only gave up this many points and things like that. Well, let's go back just the beginning half of the season, just to put that in context and why I'm just saying pump the brakes a tad on just the raw stats by this defense. They got CJ Stroud in his first NFL start. They lost to Gardner Minshew, in week 3. They got Dorian Thompson-Robinson in his first NFL start in week 4. They got Kenny Pickett in week 5, who obviously ended up losing his job to Mason Rudolph because he was so terrible. In week 6, Ryan Tannehill gets hurt and they get Malik Willis. The Josh Dobbs, Arizona Cardinals version of him in week 8. They blew a 14-point lead to Deshaun Watson, who was also injured in that game and ended up not playing another snap the rest of the season. In week 10, in week 11, they get Joe Burrow, who gets injured, and then Jake Browning takes over for Joe Burrow in that game as well. So just a bit of caution if you're just looking at raw statistics for the Ravens defense. Now, the advanced stats still back up a lot of the stuff that we see, but I know a lot of people are talking about, man, look how few points they gave up all year. Look how few yards they gave up all year. Well, the first 11 games, you can only play who you play. But the first 11 games were very, very fortunate for this Ravens team along the way.
I completely agree with you. I think if you're looking at season-long matchups and those statistics, that's how you get to a number like Lamar Jackson being a 4-point favorite against Patrick Mahomes in the AFC Championship game. I'm going to give the Chiefs a little more credit here off of what many would accuse me of recency bias. And I get it. But also, it's still Patrick Mahomes, and we know what he can do any given week. So maybe I'll look back with 2020 hindsight on Sunday night and say, clearly the Ravens were the side here. They've been the better team, more well-rounded team all year long. But I will go to bed and sleep fine that night if I lose a bet on Patrick Mahomes getting 4 points in the AFC Championship game. So the reason I did it after digging into the numbers, I do think there's something here. I fully concede that it's been after the embarrassing Christmas loss to the Raiders. It's been against very compromised defenses. 7 yards per play against the Bengals, which we know have a putrid defense this year. 400 yards of offense in below zero temperatures against the Miami Dolphins, who were down their top 3 pass rushers. And I remind everybody that the Chiefs offense, each of the past 2 seasons, 21 and 22, led the NFL in offensive yards per game over 400. This year, they dipped to 8th, around 355 a game. So, again, another indication that the offense is looking much better than it has for a lot of this year. Against the Bills, you guys mentioned it, insanely efficient on only 47 plays, 7.7 yards per play. So, do I think they're going to do that again against this Ravens defense? Do I think they're going to be otherworldly? No, I don't think that. I do think that the answer is probably somewhere in the middle here, right, Matt? I don't think the Ravens are as insanely good defensively as their metrics, but I also don't think the Chiefs are insanely good offensively now like they have been in past years because of what they've did against compromised defenses. But what if they're still above average? It's Patrick Mahomes. What if this offense is still above average? Isn't that enough to keep this game close and cover 4 points? That's ultimately what I concluded. And there's a couple things more X's and O's wise that gives me confidence in that. If you look at the way they've been approaching their offense, it's been widely reported now that Mahomes is getting to the line of scrimmage faster. It's giving him time to dissect defenses pre-snap and try and get an idea of what's coming. That's been a point of emphasis. Their offense has been limiting the pie in terms of how many targets go to their best playmakers and the other guys on this offense who stink and can't be relied on. Over the 3-game stretch, week 17, and then the 2 playoff games, because they didn't play their starters week 18, Kelsey, Rice, and Pacheco have gotten 59% of the targets in the pass game. That's way up from 46% during the regular season. So I like the changes that the Chiefs offense has made, even though one could reasonably argue that it's been against bad competition. So I think if the answer is somewhere in the middle here, I really like getting points with Mahomes here. That's kind of just what I concluded, and I can live with it.
Yeah, I full disclosure, when this hit 4, I actually wasn't thinking I was going to play, but once this hit 4, I did go ahead and take a piece of the Chiefs as well. And you guys know I've been as low on the Chiefs as any team in the NFL comparatively to everybody else over the course of the season. But there's a couple of different things that I just can't shake, which is the fact that the Ravens do rely so incredibly heavy on the run. They were the only NFL team. They were the only NFL team to run more than they passed. 1 out of 32 teams ran more than they passed over the course of the season. It was the Ravens that they did that. And listen, they're insanely efficient at doing it. They're very, very good at doing it. But I cannot help but shake, what does this team look like if it's not as efficient doing that? If it doesn't quite work as much as it has over the course of the season? How do they adjust and how do they get everything done? We know Lamar Jackson, when he is forced to pass and he is under duress, he is a much worse passer. I know most quarterbacks are, but Lamar really kind of falls off a cliff over the course of his career whenever he has gotten a ton of pressure. So I do wonder what these defensive coordinators are going to do against both of these guys, right? I mean, we're looking at two different teams on the defensive side of the ball. The Ravens run man coverage at the 6th highest rate in the NFL. The Chiefs run it at the 8th highest rate. And Adam, one of the things we know about man coverage, it's pretty dangerous against a guy like Lamar Jackson, right? Because your guys are turning and they're running with defenders and they have their backs turned, and Lamar Jackson is going to look and he's going to see, oh, hell, I can take off yet again and yet again and yet again. I wonder if Spags is going to try to mix things up here and change up what he really wants to do on defense, which is play man coverage, because of what Lamar can do with his legs.
I'll add a little bit of context to the idea of the Ravens being the 1 of 32 with rushing, because they also had the quarterback with the 2nd most rushing attempts in football this year. And I think that does change the equation just a little bit when it comes to how defenses are able to plan for your rushing attack, which is exactly what you're getting at right now when you're talking about how Steve Spagnuolo chooses to address them. Now, the strength of that Chiefs defense is definitely with that secondary. Where I think Baltimore can mitigate that, and part of how I will be approaching this game, is to be able to work the middle of the field. And that, to me, works whether you're talking about them playing more man or whether you're just talking about what Lamar ultimately chooses to do. Because you pointed out the fact that they run as much as they do. Last week, Lamar Jackson had 150 passing yards and they had 34 points. And I know that the Kansas City Chiefs are better against the rush than the Texans, but they're not that much better against the run than the Houston Texans. So I believe that if you want to take a look toward a guy like Mark Andrews, we talk all the time about guys coming back off injury where you get a discount that you wouldn't otherwise get. And right now on Mark Andrews, you're looking at plus money on over 3.5 on receptions. You are looking at 34.5 on the receiving yards. I believe you have opportunities there on both toward overs if that's the way that you want to look at this game from a prop perspective. I'm not seeing as many Isaiah Likely numbers yet. Maybe you guys have more of those and want to talk about them, but I don't know that you'll see that kind of number on Mark Andrews, and I do believe that's a way that the Ravens can go about this game, even if Steve Spagnuolo does try to take away their ability to work the outside or their ability to run the ball at the clip that they have.
I do wonder, Stephen, and it's another thing about this matchup that's super interesting, right? So Kansas City, kind of under the radar, had the number 1 defensive pressure rate in the entire NFL. They blitz at the 7th highest rate. Lamar Jackson is likely going to feel pressure in this game in some way, shape, or form. The only thing is, when you blitz a lot, it does create running lanes for these quarterbacks if you're not able to get home on all of that. And I don't want to say that I think that the absolute key to this game is whether or not they're going to be able to get home with these blitzes, or if they back off on these blitzes and don't blitz as much as they did over the course of the season. Steve Spagnuolo, as we know, everybody knows this about him, highly, highly aggressive. He ran cover 0 more than the Chiefs ran cover 0 more than any team in the NFL. So if you've got a quarterback that can take advantage of that on the outside, it's not even so much that I don't know if Lamar can take advantage of it on the outside. I just don't know if he has the personnel. Like, I don't know if he's got the receivers to take advantage of that. I mean, these are really, really good corners for the Chiefs that really have prevented big plays and really prevented touchdowns all season long, and which is why he can run that cover 0 and not have to worry about the safety help. And so if he can do that, and I don't know, it is a very interesting matchup to me. I think this is definitely more of a chess match than people are giving it credit for here, because Is he going to do that? Is he going to say, okay, Lamar, I dare you with these receivers that you have that are young and kind of inexperienced to be able to beat my guys whenever we're coming at you with cover zero. So I don't know. I'm with you, Stan. It's just, to me, I have Patrick Mahomes. I have an offense that, yes, not as good as years past, but I still have the best quarterback in the NFL, maybe in the history of the NFL. I have a very established coach and play caller. And if I am down 10 points in the fourth quarter, I am still live to cover my bet. I'm not necessarily saying the Chiefs are going to pull the upset here, but you're catching 4 points in a game where you can be down 10 in the fourth quarter and you're still live. The 7.5 is available out there right now. You are still live even if they decide to kick the field goal, down 10 and then come back. So all of that to me is just, the 3.5s out there and the 4s and stuff, you could take that on a teaser leg to the over the 10 side of things if you wanted to do that. If you're into the 2-game teaser stuff this week, I just don't see a world in which this Ravens team is 4 points better than the Chiefs.
So if the season ratings are correct, then and the Chiefs offense has been a product of just terrible defenses, then I can see a world where the Ravens are better than this current spread. But I'm, like I said, I'll go to the mat with Patrick Mahomes. If I lose, I lose. It's fine. The one you guys talked about, Lamar Jackson and scrambling ability, and if it's man defense, then there's going to be lanes. The one caveat to that I would say is keep an eye on the injury report for Willie Gay for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's been back-to-back limited participant this week. He's the guy that is the spy, right? He spies for Kansas City's defense. If he's not playing or gets hurt in the middle of the game, then maybe some live overs on Lamar Jackson rushing yards. I mean, Josh Allen had 70-plus rushing yards and 2 touchdowns last week when Gay was banged up. So that's one angle I'd be keeping an eye on.
And to add something to that, Matt, before you go on, we're not just talking about scrambling ability. We're talking about design runs as well, because I think it's a really important distinction to make when we talk about this Ravens offense and what the Chiefs ultimately have to prepare for.
The other thing to keep in mind, guys, like if you're looking to play an under on Lamar, just remember, wait until 10 minutes before kickoff. Like it is going to be one-way traffic late on all these prop stuff for a Lamar, and it is going to be nothing but over money coming in on him. And so you're going to get a much better on the under. And if you are playing an over, I would recommend getting in as soon as humanly possible on those rush yards, because not only is it going to steam up, but we got to remember this. They are still the favored team in this game. And the reason every single yard matters, remember, kneel downs count against your rushing total, right? And so, if you're looking at the difference between 64.5 and 67.5, which, by the way, are available right now out in the market. I mean, it's a 3-yard difference. 3 knees. I mean, seriously, 3 knees. It is a big deal for a guy like Lamar when you're talking about a pretty high rushing total and 3-4 yards differences in the numbers that you're going to be able to get. So again, just if you want to play an over, as soon as you hear this, go play the over now. If you want to play the under, just literally wait until 10 minutes before kickoff. It is going to be one-way traffic on the over. I guess, what would be your guess, guys? So the market high right now is 67.5. I bet you this gets on the other side of 70. That would be my guess by the time this thing kicks off.
Wouldn't surprise me for sure.
No,
he had 100 yards last week in a playoff game.
I think that's fair, Matt. I would add a piece of context, something to think about when it comes to Lamar Jackson, what you just said. If what you're thinking about is Lamar and his ability to run, then what I would add is look at attempts, because if you think that they're going to be in a situation where they're kneeling, if you think that your game script is Ravens win because of Lamar's ability to run the ball, and you think there are going to be kneel downs at the end of this game, then you're adding on the rushing attempts. Right now, you're looking at 10.5 as the number on the rushing attempts. The same way it takes away from your equity on yards, it adds to your equity when it comes to rushing attempts.
Yep, absolutely. You could almost do a mini hedge there too. You could, 75% on the yardage and 25% on the carries or something, just to give you a little bit if you wanted to go in that direction. All right, let's put a bow on this game as we move on. But I guess the other big question here is how effective can Mark Andrews be in this game? I mean, this is a guy that we know was the security blanket for Lamar Jackson. This offense was exponentially better when he was in there. He was the go-to guy. They had to kind of explore around and try and figure out who's going to be the guy. Lamar spread it around pretty well. Didn't really hone in on anybody past that. We know the target hog in this offense was, in fact, Mark Andrews. We're speculating, guys, but let's do this. I mean, he supposedly was close to going last week, is going this week. Adam, I'll start with you. Like, are you expecting what percent of the snaps? Like, are you thinking this is kind of like he plays in the red zone type territory? Or are you thinking like with Laporta, which I was completely wrong, which is why I'm trying to like stay away from guessing people's injuries and all that. Like Laporta played damn near every snap coming back off of what we thought might be a season ending knee injury. So I wouldn't put it past Mark Andrews to play 70 or 80% of these snaps.
Well, part of what you have to factor in is the fact that the Ravens are a team that will do anything out of multiple tight end sets in the first place, right? So if they're not necessarily a team where personnel dictates what type of play you're going to get, I think that adds to the fact that Mark Andrews might be even more active. Look, I told you earlier in the podcast, I think Mark Andrews overs are a very good spot. They're probably my favorite prop spot in this game, maybe other than Pacheco rush unders, even though I do believe Kansas City is going to try to run the ball at some point in this game. I'm more on Ravens than I am on Chiefs here, and I believe that Kansas City's probably going to be chasing in this game. We were even talking about it a minute ago, right? If they're down 10, you're trying to chase and get inside that 4. I think Kansas City is going to be in a spot where they don't necessarily have the luxury of being able to run Pacheco as much as they would like to. And if he's dealing with an injury, he also might end up in more of decoy status than the usual rushing that he's able to do. So for me, when it comes to Mark Andrews, I really do like the depressed numbers that are on him because I don't think he has to play a full share in order to get to the numbers that are there for him.
Yeah, a couple of different props I looked at in this game. They're not in the account yet, but like might make it in there. Probably will make it in there. So weirdly enough, like Nelson Aguilar. So if we're talking a lot of cover zero, right? And we're talking just one-on-ones with these corners for the Chiefs, Aguilar's like a burner, right? Like he has one route. His route tree is a straight line. And so if Lamar is going to get that cover zero and he's got a one-on-one, if he's going to chunk it up in a direction, like it's 14.5 yards for Aguilar. So it's one catch. Like he's not going to get volume, but you're basically betting on one catch for him. I think that's at least somewhat interesting along the way. And to Adam's point, if you believe at all that Pacheco is going to be limited in this and you are a Ravens backer, then you would be looking at basically all Pacheco unders because obviously if they get down, they're going to be throwing the ball. And if he's hurt, he's not going to be the one that's in there catching the passes or anything like that. And then, you know, again, if you think that he could be limited at all by this toe, then you'd be looking at unders as well. Again, stuff that you wait and bet right before game time because all of those numbers are also going to creep up throughout the course of the week. Steven, any final thoughts here on this one? From a prop standpoint, from a total standpoint, from a side standpoint, or just any nuggets?
Couple Chiefs props. I'll give our teammate Mo Noir a lot of credit for these. He found them, and I dug into more numbers on them, and I agree with him on these. While you guys make excellent points on unders for usage and yardage for Pacheco, I still think we're getting a really good price here on him for an anytime touchdown. You can get plus 140 right now, up to that price as we record on Friday afternoon. He's the bell cow. Like that should not be the price for a bell cow running back in the Chiefs offense. And even if you're looking at regular season usage before his usage got even higher, when they're inside the 10-yard line this season, Pacheco's gotten 20 carries. CEH only had 5. McKinnon had 1. McKinnon's on IR, so he's not a factor now. And the only 2 times CEH has scored a touchdown this season were a game where Pacheco had a hamstring injury, so he was limited that week, and a game where Pacheco didn't play at all. So this is all Pacheco, except for last week when they tried to give Mecole Hardman the ball and he fumbled it through the end zone. So I'm pretty sure Andy Reid's not going to make that mistake again this week. So yeah,
we'd like to think
you would like to think. So I think Pacheco's price for a touchdown is good. And while we're talking about Mecole Hardman, Mo astutely pointed out that Kadarius Toney was a full participant in practice on Wednesday. Now was limited on Thursday, but if he's going to be active and playing, are we sure Mecole Hardman's even going to get any snaps in this game? So even though he's being lined at 1.5 receptions, I found a book where you can get under half a reception at like plus 230, plus 240 on Mecole Hardman. I'm not sure he's going to get a target in this game. And if he's still active, then those bets would cash. So if Tony's active, I like just taking some extreme unders on Mecole Hardman.
Adam, I want to get your final thoughts here as well. My final one, and this is more of like a same game parlay type one here. I don't know if this is a singular bet you want to put in your account, but Justice Hill has really chipped away at Gus Edwards' snaps. And so it wouldn't surprise me if this is more of a 50-50 type split in this game. And so I don't really love betting people to do things that isn't their primary job, but like Justice Hill's receiving yards is 13.5. If he's getting 50% of the snaps, or maybe he even ends up getting 55% of the snaps or something like that with Gus Edwards on the sideline. And specifically, like if there is a world, which I don't think any of us would be shocked if the Ravens were trailing in this game or something, then Justice Hill's going to get all the work and it's not going to be Gus Edwards. And so anyway, a guy that's been chipping into the workload anyway at 13.5 receiving yards is pretty interesting to me. I think you're looking at a guy that can get there in 2 or 3 catches. And certainly if the game script goes against them, then that would be a slam dunk on the over of 13.5. Adam, your final
Well,
thoughts.
I'll tell you this much. While we were talking in the last 30 seconds, the rushing line at DraftKings moved up on Justice Hill. So there are people out there who are thinking the usage will be what you think it'll be. It went from 34.5 to 35.5. And if you think it's a 50-50 split and you think the Ravens are going to run the way that the Ravens tend to run, then I think you're plus EV on that just based on usage before you even start to factor in anything else. So I like the thought when it comes to that. If you're thinking same game parlay and you're thinking the way that I'm thinking about this game, I want anything that attacks the middle of the field, right? And I would take that and I would look at the Baltimore Ravens and I would say, how do they get after the middle of the field? And then I would also look at the outside and say, and how do I also say, maybe not as much OBJ, maybe not as much Rashad Bateman, right? Like maybe those are guys where I'm looking to put some unders together with some middle of the field overs on guys like Mark Andrews if I really want to lean into what I think the correlation is of how the Ravens will go after the Chiefs.